Welcome to IB Economics. This is Unit 1.1. These are the learning objectives for today. Every time you see and you come across a word in orange, you need to memorize. So it's important that you create your own cards with the definitions from the book, or you can even try to do your own so that it's best for you to remember. Well, we are going to focus on the social nature of economics. We're going to explain that. We are going to distinguish between microeconomics and macroeconomics. What's the difference between these two subdisciplines of economics? We are going to explain the 9 central concepts that run through the course in economics. We are going to explain the meaning of scarcity, and we have 2 focuses on scarcity. We are going to identify and explain the 4 factors of production. And finally, I'm going to explain the meaning of opportunity cost and its relationship to choice and free goods. So, the social nature of economics. Social sciences are academic disciplines. The most common ones are anthropology, economics, political science, psychology, and sociology, among many others. So economics is part of this social science. And because it deals with human society, it deals with behavior of people. And economics is focused on how people organize themselves, organize the activities they have on the one hand, and on the other hand, how people or individuals behave to satisfy their needs and wants. It's very important to point out these two terms, needs and wants. Needs are all the goods that are necessary for your subsistence, whereas wants are all the desires that might satisfy, but they are not really essential to survive. So, economics, all in all, is a social science, and the approach is to study human society using a scientific method. We are going to focus on that in future units. Here we have a definition of economics by the Oxford University Press coursebook, entitled Economics Course Companion. So according to this, economics is known as a social science. This means that it is a study of people in society and how they interact with each other. Other social sciences include sociology, political science, psychology, anthropology, and history. So as the disciplines of economics has evolved, certain branches of the discipline have incorporated the findings of many of these other social sciences in order to explain economic behavior better. Let's have an example. The Earth is finite. So as the Earth is finite, it means that we only have finite resources. And as we have finite resources to produce goods and services. So the quantity of goods and services available are finite as a consequence. Now, what is a good? A good is a physical object, something that you can see and touch. For example, your cell phone, your laptop, okay, your car. But services are intangible things. For example, repairing a mobile phone, car insurance, haircuts. So we have 2 types of things. The ones that are tangible are called goods. The ones that are intangible are called services. Now, the resources used to produce goods and services are finite. So humans need to know how to best um, allocate or distribute these resources to obtain an optimum um, decision. So that is very important to consider. So in the last part of this text, we have the clear definition and difference between needs and wants. Needs are the things that we must have to survive, whereas wants are the things that we would like to have, but they are not necessary for physical survival. Here we have an important term, scarcity. Scarcity exists because of the conflict between these finite resources, okay, in the world, and all our needs and wants. Our needs and wants are infinite. That's why we have a conflict between what we want, desire, and what we have. Because of this conflict, economics, the discipline of economic emerges. So economics is a social science that examines the way that people behave and interact with each other to overcome the problems that arise as a result of the basic economic problem of scarcity. In the last paragraph here, it is obvious that scarcity leads to choices. So people need to make choices because of the scarcity. So here we have another definition of economics. Economics is the study of the choices that people make in overcoming the problems that arise because resources are limited, while needs and wants are unlimited. So, as I said, this conflict that appears, for this conflict, the economics as a discipline helps you to make the right choices, or the most efficient choices at least. Let's move on. Now, economics is a social science. And from this social science, it can be subdivided into two, microeconomics and macroeconomics. What is the difference between them? Take a look at the photograph. So microeconomics is analyzing the economy with a magnifier, whereas macroeconomics, in order to understand the system of the economy, it's important to see this with a telescope. So that is in a simple representation what both subdisciplines are. But let's analyze them in detail. The micro level is called microeconomics, and it analyzes, it examines how people behave when they make decisions in the economy. So we have basically two groups inside this field. The study of consumers or households, how individuals purchase things, and the firms. When we talk about firms, we are talking about companies. So microeconomics is concerned with how these individuals behave, how they make choices. For example, when you go to a supermarket, we can analyze, for instance, the people who buy some specific products in a supermarket. So we are analyzing the behavior of these consumers. Microeconomics comes from the Greek word "wikpo" or micro, that means small. On the other hand, we have macroeconomics, and it examines the economy as a whole. We are going to use the word aggregate. Aggregate is a very common word used in economics. So macroeconomic uses aggregates. That means collections, or it sees goods, people as a collective form. So, for example, in the example of analyzing how specific consumers behave when they buy some products at a supermarket, in macroeconomics, we would then analyze the sum of these individuals within a country. So we analyze this at a higher level, at an aggregate level. Macro comes from the Greek word wakpok, or macros. That means large. Okay. We are going to analyze more of this, and you can see the chapters explained here. Here, it's an important text. You can read both sides, and it gives you more precision of the two subdisciplines. It's important to take notes of the words change, well-being, efficiency, intervention. On the other hand, well-being here in macroeconomics. Why? Because these terms are going to be important, and I will be defining one by one. So you can read in this section. As I said, it's important to analyze some important terms. The first term we are going to analyze is scarcity. Scarcity is central in economics because it refers to insufficient resources. Okay, so resources are limited and human needs and wants are unlimited. For this conflict, scarcity appears because of this conflict. So if there were no scarcity, there would be no social science of economics. Economics exists due to this conflict called scarcity. Now, scarcity leads people to make choices. So in some way, economics is a study of choice. Why? Why am I saying that? Because resources are scarce. It's not possible for humans to satisfy all their needs and wants. It's impossible. Therefore, you need to make a decision. So economics studies how people make decisions, make choices, and they need to have options, alternative options. So economics analyzes the present and future consequences of such choices. Let's suppose that a government has to choose between buying more weapons or educating people more. They need to make a choice. They cannot do both at the same level at the same time. So the consequence of these decisions is what economics focuses on. Now, the third term is efficiency. Because of these choices that you make, so it is better to make good decisions. So efficiency refers to making the best possible use of these scarce resources to avoid resource waste. In addition, it requires that these scarce resources are used to produce the goods and services that mostly satisfy society's needs and wants. So when efficiency takes place, we can also call it allocative efficiency. And this allocative efficiency, so the best way to distribute in an efficient way, can be a standard to determine economic actions in the future. So if governments become efficient, this automatically becomes a standard for future governments to follow. All right, so we can call it a standard or benchmark. Now, finally, the word equity, well, in this presentation, equity is related to being fair or just. Equity is not exactly the same meaning as equality. Equity might represent something farther than that. Equality is giving the same for everybody. Suppose that you have a pizza and you have 10 slices and you have 10 people. if you give one slice to each one, there is equality. However, there is not necessarily equity. How could it be? What could be the decision so that equity takes place? Well, in this case, equity, uh, let me give you an example. In this situation, in this example of these 10 people who won a slice of pizza, suppose that two of them are really starving, and two of them, they haven't eaten anything. And perhaps one is not really hungry, so just half a slice is enough. Suppose that we have two other people who are not really hungry. An efficient way to carry out this allocation would be perhaps to give two slices of pizza to each of the starving people, and perhaps half a slice of a pizza to the ones who are not starving. In this way, we are promoting equity. Everybody is satisfied, but not necessarily it means that you give the same for everybody. We are going to study this in future chapters, future units. Okay, so we continue with the concepts. Right now, we are going to study the concept of economic well-being. Economic well-being means bienestar económico. So economic well-being is a concept that has several dimensions. Economic well-being has to do with the level of prosperity, the economic satisfaction, the economic standards among individuals in a given society. So what does that mean? One example of economic well-being is when people have a good job, have a house, have income and wealth. So respecting people's income and wealth is something that brings economic satisfaction. This is one example. Another example is when the society can pursue their goals, when the society can work productively, when they can develop their full potential. So economic well-being exists. Another example is how their life and their quality of life can be considered satisfactory. For example, if individuals in a given society have access to health, good education, social connections, environmental quality, personal security, that brings economic well-being. And finally, the fourth point is when they have the ability to maintain all of the above over time. So it's not just to have access to that, it's to maintain all what was mentioned in both the midterm and the long term. Sustainability is a very important term because it has to do with maintenance of any particular activity or policy. So this term sustainability refers to the ability of the present generation to satisfy its needs by the use of resources. It's resources that are perhaps non-renewable, but without limiting future generations' ability. So it means, in simple, that you can use the resources that you have at present, but you do not compromise them for future generations. All right. Change in Greek is panta rei, and it means everything flows. The philosopher Heraclitus thought that change is part of our lives. Now, this term is very important in economics. And we have the term change in economic theory and in real world events. Let's study the first one, economic theory. In economic theory, economists normally study change between one situation to another that has been caused by a change in one or more variables. It's important that you know that your studies of economics, um, you during this course, you will be asked to analyze and evaluate the kind of change in a large variety of contexts. And this means that you need to use the textbook to analyze, how the theory impacts, how the theory can be used to analyze what is happening in different contexts. For example, let's take the case of Argentina. Argentina was a prosperous country, but then it nowadays has one of the highest levels of inflation. There is change there. So it's important to analyze what happened, what made this country be so inflationary. So there was change there. Another example is the Asian countries like Singapore, Malaysia. How is it possible that they were very poor 60 or 70 years ago, and now they are world leading powers? There was a change. So the economic theory will give you the tools to analyze what happened, what variables help them boost their economic levels. On the other hand, we have the second one, which is the analysis of real world phenomena. That has to do with change at the institutional level, at a technological level, social, political, cultural environments in which economic events happen. So it's important to analyze real world events. Economics is not separate from history or from other social sciences. For example, take the case of migration. Migration happens as a result of many factors. So this is an example of a real world phenomena that leads to change. More will be studied in future units. Now, interdependence is a very important term because in a nutshell, interdependence happens because of globalizations. We are not islands, isolated islands. We need to interact with others. So you as a consumer need from others to eat every day. You need also teachers at school, for example. Firms need suppliers to satisfy their consumers or the customers. So in a highly interdependent world, events in one part give rise to many and possibly unintended consequences in other parts. So take the case of the financial collapse in 2008. What happened after this financial crisis? Many more countries were affected all around the world. This is an example of interdependence. It happens in financial in the financial world. It happens in different aspects of our lives. So economists take into consideration unintended consequences as well as intended consequences of economic decisions, because these decisions impact societies. Intervention is a very important term as well, because it has to do with how the government operates. When we talk about intervention, we generally refer to how the government gets involved in the market, for example. the market offers different advantages. For example, the market might bring prosperities, but how governments take part in this could be essential for the outcome of a given country. The level of intervention in China may not be the same level of intervention in Germany, or perhaps in Japan, or perhaps in any Latin American country. So economists and policymakers usually tend to disagree on what? On the level or the degree of intervention. For example, in some countries, there is a higher level of intervention more than in others. There are others in which the government lets the market flow, whereas in others, they are the market is highly intervened by countries. So there is a heated debate between which type of intervention is better than other. This is something very important we are going to analyze in future units. Now, take a look at this photograph. This photograph perhaps show us what happened during COVID-19. Goods were scarce. So the problem of scarcity. Economics derives from the Greek term oikon nemein. It means one who manages and administers all matters relating to a household. So over time, this expression has evolved, becoming one who is prudent in the use of resources. So economics is basically how well can individuals and how well or how efficient can individuals use scarce resources to avoid waste. So scarcity is central in economics. I explained already the unlimited level of needs and wants that people have. So here we have the difference. Needs and wants need to be satisfied by goods and services. So the study of economic happens because it's important that we can satisfy our unlimited needs and wants. So needs and wants can be satisfied with two things, goods and services. It is not possible for societies and the people within them to produce or buy all the things that they want. Why? Because of the level of resources. Resources are scarce. So resources are the inputs that we can use to produce goods and services that people need, that people want. And it's super important because for this reason, we have factors of production. So there are 4 factors of production. We can call them one by one. Labor, so the work you do. Machines and factories, that is your land. Gifts of nature, like agricultural land, metals inside the earth. So in entrepreneurship, these are the 4 factors of productions. So factors of productions do not exist in an unlimited abundance. Factors of productions are scarce. They are limited, insufficient, okay? And factors are key to make use of them, to become more efficient. Well, scarcity has already been defined. Now, as I previously said, this conflict leads people to make choices. I gave you the idea of government, and there is an idiomatic expression that is called guns or butter. So in this example, the government needs to choose between producing defense goods, so that represents guns, weapons, tanks, or butter, food. So more defense goods mean less food, while more food means fewer defense goods. Societies then have to choose. They have no alternative but to know how to choose so that they are more efficient. Okay, I already explained that, and it's super important that you copy all these terms. Economics is a study of choices leading to the best possible use of the scarce resources in order to best satisfy unlimited human needs and wants. Here you have your first piece of homework. We have 3 points to answer. So you can take a pause and focus on doing that. I'm going to show the answers right after this slide. These are the answers. This is the answer for number 1, number 2, and number 3. All right, now let's move on. Sustainability is a key term. So economic activities in many countries are achieved at the expense of the natural environment. You cannot produce tables without wood, for example. You may not produce electronic devices without the extraction of minerals. So economic activities occur at the expense of the natural environment and natural resources, of course. Economic growth involves increases in the amount of goods and services produced, very often in increased air and water pollution. So the more is produced, the more pollution happens, the more destruction or depletion of forest. So that's why it's very important that the concept of sustainable development can arise, because sustainable development has to do with meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations. So, in other words, sustainable development has to do with efficient decisions, efficient choices made. Do you have more information to read here? An example of sustainable development nowadays could be the use of electric cars. Why? Because the purpose is to not contaminate as much as using cars with gasoline and the common fuel that we know. So here we have an important term. Don't forget to write down the term in your notebooks. Here we have more examples of sustainability. Here it's your second task. We have 2 questions. You can pause this and take some time to do that. I will present the answers of this in the next slide. Okay, for number 1 and number 2. This is number 1, relationship between scarcity and sustainability explained. Don't forget to pause. Don't forget to pause this, analyze, and you can ask any questions during the class. And this one is for number 2. sections A and sections B. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to resources as factors of production. We have 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Here we have a diagram on in which it explains how they all work together. Land consists of all natural resources that include agricultural and non-agricultural land. Natural resources are also called gifts of nature. Labor includes the physical and mental effort that people contribute to the production of goods and services. For example, a teacher in school, an economist in a bank, or a governmental institution, a doctor in a hospital. They contribute to the production of either goods or services that individuals need. Capital is also known as physical capital. It's an important factor of production because with capital, goods and services can be produced. Machinery, people can buy machinery, people can buy tools, factories, buildings, road systems with physical capital. Finally, entrepreneurship management, or just entrepreneurship, is a special human skill that people possess. And they have the ability to innovate, to take business risks, to find new opportunities. So these are the 4 and very important factors of production. If you can see below, you have a diagram that goes from limited resources to unlimited ones, how land, labor, and capital are used to produce inside a company, taking risk, of course, so that they can satisfy consumers, producers, and governments. So that goes from production to consumption. Now, we have different meanings for the term capital. Capital can be used in different ways. Physical capital, already explained before, human capital, and this has to do with the abilities and knowledge that people have so that they can become more productive. Somebody who works using pen and paper may not produce as much as somebody who is using a computer. So it's the knowledge that people have that provides more benefits and to increase the level of output. We have natural capital, for example, that is environmental capital, financial capital to be read there. Here we have some terms that we will be studying that in the future. Financial instruments like stocks and bonds, funds that are used to provide benefits. Here you have your task number 3 with 4 questions. Pause this video so that you can focus on that. Okay, I am providing now the answers for number 1, A and B. Number 2 now, physical. Number 3, 2 and 3, physical capital and entrepreneurship. And finally, number 4, for A and B. You can pause these videos so that you can analyze the answers. Do not forget to ask any questions during class. Okay, this is a very important term, opportunity cost. It's central because it has to do with choice. So opportunity cost can be defined as the value of the next best alternative that must be given up or sacrificed in order to obtain something else. let's suppose that your decision to read this book means that you have given up another activity. For example, sleeping. You are watching this video, you're watching this class, but your best activity was to sleep. You prefer not to sleep to see this video. So if your best or your favorite alternative was sleeping, then you have sacrificed that. So that is the opportunity cost for watching this video. Here we have more examples of opportunity costs. And the concept of opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative that must be sacrificed to obtain something else. This is your task number 4. You can pause this video and start working on this. I am presenting the answers. In number 1 and number 3, the definition of opportunity cost. And in number 2, how scarcity and choice are related to opportunity cost. In number 3, I provide these answers. Okay, here we have free and economic goods. A free good is any good that is not scarce. For example, we have air. An economic good is any good that is scarce, either because it is naturally occurring, a scarce resource, or because it is produced by scarce resources. So all economic goods have an opportunity cost greater than 0. Free goods are rare. Sometimes a good can be a free good in certain situations, and economic goods and an economic good in others. Arable land in America before European colonizers arrived was a free good. Salt used to be a free good that has become an economic good nowadays. Oxygen in the open, unpolluted countryside can be a free good. It is important to distinguish that free goods from goods or resources that are available free of charge to their users. We are going to study more of this in chapter 6 and chapter 5. Here is the task number 5. You have 3 questions, and I will be providing you the answers. You can pause the videos. This is for number 1. This is for number 2. The 5 sections of 2. You can pause the video. In number 3. Finally, I have summarized all the terms that you need to study in this unit 1.1. Thank you very much, and see you in class.